Hey there. So I've been working on longer running projects as of late, and I've been getting this real need to finish something. I'm not sure if it's just me, but I need to finish something every now and then, or I feel a bit off. Maybe irritated, antsy, basically just not super happy. I found that game jams scratch that itch, and I can look at what I've created, and I wish I had more time to finish, but I made it by the deadline, and that's really all I care about. Then back to the other projects. I try to limit myself to one a month to not perpetually be working on game jams, which according to most of my friends I still do a lot. If you aren't familiar with what a game jam is, they vary in detail but basically boil down to this. A group of people agree that over a defined period of time they will make a game. Usually a theme is chosen at the start and all participants must build a game around it. The other week there just so happened to be two jams that I wanted to take part in. One was a week-long jam and the other 12 hours. I thought I could swing that, so off we go. This video will be an overall post-mortem of both games and the experience I had as a whole. I should mention that I also do game jams solo. I work on game dev at really odd hours and have developed a workflow that works for me. I know I'm missing out on a lot by working alone as well, don't get me wrong, but there is a certain thrill of knowing it's all on you, and right now that's what I'm having the most fun with. So let's jump on it. Starting on Friday, I have the 8 Bits to Infinity GB30 jam. I've participated in several 8 Bits to Infinity jams, I even won one, and I really like the tweak to the typical game jam format. Along with the typical theme we all expect, they also go ahead and add a constraint. For example, I've participated in the platformer jam, where I had to make a platformer game with the theme of darkness. Or the 2-button jam, where for the whole game the player only was allowed to have 2 buttons as inputs. This time around, to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the original Game Boy, we had to make a Game Boy style game in the theme of It's Dangerous to Go Alone. Now, game development isn't a job for me, so I still have to do that whole work thing. Luckily this Friday I had a lot of simple projects going on, which allowed me to brainstorm and concept before I could get to work on the game itself. I knew from the get-go that I wasn't going to be making a Game Boy game with all of the limitations that hardware had. I wanted to have fun and not fight limitations at every step of the way, especially with losing a whole day for another game jam. So for me, Game Boy style is in the realm of my nostalgia brain. This is how I remember it. Not so strictly on how it was. Really, I wanted to make my style of game crossed with Game Boy. By the time I got home from work, I had a simple concept of 2 people that need to get across a crumbling bridge to get to the exit on the other side of a room. As a player steps on the bridge, the tile will fall, meaning that 2 players cannot take the same path to get across the room. Basically, a simple movement puzzle game with the gimmick of switching between the players. I've been playing with the tile movement behavior in Construct 3, which was added a while back. I'm releasing a rather long tutorial showing how to make a game using the principles on this channel at the moment, and I figured since I took the time to learn it, I might as well use it. First off, I spent a couple hours getting the basic mechanics in place and somewhat working. 2 players? Check. Switch control between them? Check. Tiles that disappear after you step on them? Check. Area that if a player is over they fall, unless they are on a disappearing tile before it disappears? Check. Alright, with the basic mechanics in place, it's time to start on the art. I usually just make the player sprite at this point, and then add art and mechanics as I go. But knowing I was going to lose all of Saturday, I decided to spend the rest of the night just creating art mockups for all of the game elements. This process ended up working really well for me, and I'm going to continue to do it in longer game jams in the future. I have to say, I've never limited myself to a 4-color palette before. It was a lot tougher than I was expecting. I found I couldn't really work on each element separately because I needed to know how they interacted to make sure that there was enough contrast and separation for each individual item. I did double the Game Boy's base resolution to allow for larger sprites, which was a big help in getting both detail and contrast. When working on art, I bounce between both working in Photoshop and Aseprite. For overall layout and mockups, I use Photoshop as it's the program I know the best, but for animating it really is a pain, so I jump over to Aseprite for anything that needs to be animated. This game has very few animations actually, so I spent most of my time in Photoshop changing around the color schemes and really trying to get as much separation so the players stood out as much as I could. I ended up getting so wrapped up in the art that I didn't call it until around 2:30 in the morning. I was really excited, very happy with the look. It's cute, simple, straightforward, but now I have to forget about that and do it all over again tomorrow. I need to get some sleep. So Saturday. A new day and another jam. It was definitely interesting getting that far into one project just to set it aside for a day and make something completely new. So this is a local jam put on by some friends of mine from my local game dev meetup. The jam is held at a local esports arena, which is a really cool atmosphere to work on games. This jam, like the other, also has some extra rules. I want to talk about this subject more in another video, but I really enjoy game jams that do more than just a theme. The Tilted Jam takes it to a whole nother level though. Here's the format. We are in the arena for 12 hours, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., but we need time to get set up and time to present at the end. So it really breaks down to about 10 hours to make a game. At the start of the jam, everyone contributes to a pool of nouns and adjectives. Around 11:30, one of each is selected. This time the words were gloomy and shark. And now the fun part. Every hour until 9 p.m., each team can add scope creep for extra points. You send one representative up to the front, you pick a card with a random time waster on it, and then choose a random adjective or noun. This changes the way you have to approach making a game. Not only do you not have enough time to make a whole game in 10 hours, but now, right up until the end, you have to keep making adjustments to fit the new scope. You get extra points for adding scope, but if you choose to add the scope and you don't get it in your game, you actually lose extra points. So there is a risk-reward system going on here. This is the second time I've done the jam with these rules in place, and personally, I love them. You have to approach making a game in a very different way. My strategy is to do every scope round and always pick nouns. I find adding an item, which nouns usually are, is far less problematic than an adjective, which can change everything fundamentally. For example, adding an apple into your game is a lot less work for me than adding in the concept of expensive. Although I did get senses as a noun once, so what do I know? Alright, on to the game. Gloomy shark. After shaking baby shark out of my head more than I like to admit, I came up with the concept of the player playing as a anglerfish swimming around the bottom of the sea. With the only light coming from its head, that makes the world gloomy. Cool. Every few seconds, a shark will spawn off to the side and shoot across the screen. You need to avoid this. That covers the first two things. We've got gloomy and shark. So first thing is to make a fish, box, and get it swimming around. Attach a camera, and fun lighting effect that allows the visible light area to grow and shrink. And just as I'm adding shells as a form of ammo that you can pick up and fire, it's scope creep time. And what do I get? Apple. Great, I think. I was adding shells. Those are now apples. Why not? Why are they at the bottom of the sea, you ask? I get the apples added in, and it's time for art. Anglerfish are a really odd shape. I spent maybe 20 to 30 minutes trying to make something I liked, eventually settling for something I didn't hate. I realized that if I spend too much time on the art, I wouldn't finish. So from here on out, I just kind of went with my first pass and called it good. Great. Now we have to add a werewolf. I'll put it in a scuba mask or something and it can be an enemy. I'll deal with that later. At this point, I hit some issues because of course the things that I had working a minute ago don't work now. It's like untying a knot. Changing or fixing one thing reveals the next section that is tangled and... crap. Monkey. Okay, it'll be on holiday with the werewolf and in the water. Back to the knot, untangling one section at a time and on to the next and... Alright, many hours of frantic work later, in the end I finished. I made a single level game that has you swimming around to collect 20 sunfish, avoiding scuba diving werewolves and monkeys that shoot harpoons at you, collecting peanuts, chicken nuggets, and dolls for points? Grab apples and shoot them at the enemies, all while avoiding the dreaded shark. I called it Stay Bright, and threw together a windscreen that displayed your score. As I'm writing this, I just found out that I won the jam as well, which is really crazy to me, so apparently some people liked it. Alright, final thoughts. I will never fully be satisfied with a game I make, especially one I make in this short of a time limit. I'm happy with the outcome, but I feel that it only works in context of knowing about the time limit. As a game on its own, while I still think it can be fun, it's maybe about 5 to 10 minutes of fun. Nothing special. There is still a handful of bugs ranging from passable to, oops, that really shouldn't happen. A passable issue is when the player turns around and the sprite transforms in an odd way, making it all of a sudden look like you're playing paper anglerfish. Less passable is eating a sunfish and it counting as 2 or 3, making the game a little easier. And an oops is the shark not triggering properly sometimes, causing it to spawn instantly on the start of the game, killing you before you have a chance to move. It doesn't happen every time, but it does happen. Now I know I can go back and fix these issues, but I probably never will. Like I said at the start, I use these game jams as an incentive to finish something to the best of my abilities in the time limit. Like game dev of old that had to load their game onto a cartridge, what was on the chip is what you played. And from this I learned that I need to stop using mirroring for sprites when they're facing in a different direction. This was the umpteenth time that I've run into a serious roadblock because at least in Construct, mirroring a sprite also flips things like its angle, which means when you code other interactions you have to account for it being mirrored or not mirrored. In the end, I just need to start making sprites that face both right and left. With that, I present it to the group, and my whirlwind Saturday is done, and I finally get home around midnight. Happy that I finished a game, but wait, there's more. I still have another game jam going on that I haven't thought about in a day. Well, I'll have to get to it tomorrow. It's late. Sunday, my last full weekend day. I did absolutely nothing related to game dev. I have a wife and a daughter, and I needed to spend some time with them. I wasn't planning to spend all day just hanging out with them, watching movies and such, but that's what happened. I was worrying a bit that usually for long game jams, I get most of my work done over the weekends since I don't have my real job eating up most of my day and energy. But balance is important, and spending time with loved ones took precedence that day. Monday. Thankfully, I finished all of the art mockups on Friday, so after work I was able to just start implementing art for everything. With the art in, I started on the last mechanic that needed to be added. I call them elevators, even though I know that's not the correct way to describe them. They only go up and down in the context of the screen. From the game perspective, they move side to side. Moving platforms maybe? I don't know. They're locked into my mind as elevators, so we're gonna go with that. These things were a pain in the butt. I tried many ways to make them move. In the end, the best solution was to have a start and end sprite, and then when the lever is flipped, the elevator would actually tween itself between the two positions. So great. It moves, it works, until the player gets on it. They fell off every time. I tried pinning the player, they'd fall off. I set the player's position to the elevator every tick, they'd move and then fall off. I went back and forth trying to make these players work for a long time, and in the end it ended up being some shenanigans with the tile movement behavior. You make a whole tutorial series using it, and there's still stuff you don't know. Turns out I just had to set the player's new grid position when the elevator stopped moving. And then everything was working properly. Excellent, but that took all night. Tuesday, menus. Oh, menus. Not really exciting, and while I did hit some bumps along the way, it just really wasn't a very interesting night. Wednesday. Wednesday was all about sounds. Admittedly, sound is my least proficient area, in both music and sound effects. I've been trying to make my own music for the past few game jams using beatbox. I was trying off and on for the last few days to make a good puzzle background track, and this is the best I got. Beatbox is a really great program. This travesty is just user error. Conveniently, the guy that runs 8 Bits to Infinity is a musician that's made tons of Creative Commons music. Nothing super Game Boy-y, but again, this is a Game Boy style game. I found a few tracks from him that I liked, so I had the music for the menu, game, and windscreen covered now. I picked up a game asset pack from the Humble Bundle a while back and figured I should probably use some of the elements at some point. So I grabbed the sound effects pack out of there, which was made by Cactus Bear, and then filled out some of the holes that didn't fill with sounds made by Dane Reed 1024, which I've also been using for my Rocksmacker tutorial. Adding in the sound effects really gave the game life. Sound effects are very important and can affect how the player feels about the game. Again, sound design is an art form I have very little experience in, so my main focus is cute. Does it sound cute? Does it make everything look cute? Use it. Listen to these footsteps. So cute. Thursday. This is my last day to work on the game. Technically I have until Friday morning, but I won't be able to do anything with the game that early in the morning and get it submitted in time, so I have to finish it tonight. Level design is tough. Puzzle design is tougher. I chose to go very simple, but throw in a bunch of extra platforms to make the player think that there's more routes than there actually are. I was pretty burnt out by this point, but I still feel like I came up with some semi-okay puzzles. There are a few levels that are pretty similar, I have to say. The original plan was to have 20 levels, but I honestly started feeling tapped out around 13, so I just decided to call it there. I think I had been staring at everything too long and just really didn't have any more ideas. So I went ahead, put together a you win screen. I even made the players jump up and down for joy, because cute. Export the game, make the art for the itch page, fill out the descriptions, take some screenshots, and I hit submit with about 10 hours until the deadline. I can't believe how well I was actually able to manage my time this jam. I intentionally kept the moving pieces to a minimum, and that actually worked out well for me. I took my time the first day, developed my core concept, and created the art in a mock-up form to see what everything would look like together, saving time on redesigns. This works for a puzzle game that reuses the same elements over and over again every level. So who knows if this will actually work again, but I'm 100% going to try it again on my next jam. Unless it's a 12-hour jam, all bets are off on those. So the game, Cross the Gap. A lovely story of a boy and a girl that need to cross the gap of each room together. What is the story? I really don't know. The story is something I definitely sacrificed in the name of time. So your head canon is the true canon. I'm really pleased with the game. It is simple for the most part. There is some tricky bits with controlling the characters, but in the end, I haven't seen anyone have too much difficulty. Plus, this is the first game I've made that my wife played and wanted to beat. So I won in my own mind already. I did have to fiddle with the mechanics a few times, but in the end I haven't seen anything really buggy take place, which is pretty good for a Game Jam game of mine. You can spam the switch player button and move both characters simultaneously, but I still can't find a benefit from that unless you were maybe trying to speedrun it, but let's be real, no one will be speedrunning this. If you do, you're weird. And let me know, because I want to see. I'm just kidding about that weird part. Overall, the week was a success and I'm really happy with one of my games. The other one is more how you enjoy something because you know how hard it was to make. In the end, 2 jams in 1 week, it's a fun challenge. It took a lot of time, it was really draining at times, I lost a little bit of sleep, but in the end, I enjoyed it. I probably won't do it again, at least not for a while, but I said that last time about soloing the 12-hour game jam, and here we are again. So this whole thing ended up being way longer than I meant it to be. I hope you enjoyed it anyway. I'm a fan of other game dev videos and thought others might find the experience interesting. So if you've enjoyed this, leave a comment. If you didn't, leave me a comment with what you think could be improved. Let's be constructive because a critique without details is pretty much no help at all. Consider subscribing for more and I'll talk to you next time. Have a good one.